Hello again. If all goes to plan here, this game's about to get pretty frantic because we're going to look at buffing the player up. So we're going to make perks, as I call them, because I used to play a game called Crimson Land that was really good and it had perks, and you should go and play it if you've never played it. Waffle aside, we're going to do the little bit that if you rewind the video and look at the start, the intro, at the bottom there's a bit of code that says perk, and that lets the player fire faster or defend itself or retaliate. And we're going to start chipping at that. And just before we do it, I'm going to make a new flash file. No particular reason, you don't have to do this, but I want to show you something that's quite important to this. So I'm going to go to the timeline after I've made a movie clip. I'm just going to make a random movie clip. Totally white cube was a good idea. Convert to a symbol, doesn't matter about that. Just give it an instance name when it's a button. But if I give it a name, I'll call it test. So I've got a little movie clip there called test, a little button called test. If I go to the actions, this won't be news to you, but I can affect test by typing something like test.scalex equals 2. And if I run that, you'll notice that test gets twice the size. That's nothing new, but this next way might be if I do test square brackets and then type scale x as a string and close the square brackets equals 0.5 and run that. Notice that we shrink to half the original size, and that's because these two both access the same property. We're just doing it in different ways, and this is key to the way that perks worked in the game. So that's the base knowledge I just needed you to understand before we get into it. So I'm going to close that, don't save it. And I'm going to add a new class now. So I'm going to make a new ActionScript class, and I'm going to call it Perk. If you're in an older version of Flash, you'll have to make an ActionScript file and just follow through in a bit. So you'll be following this bit. Follow through is a bad choice of words, but follow the video and copy what I'm doing here. We're not going to extend anything, so we don't need to import movie clip just yet. We probably will import sprite in a little while though. The setup for the perk is going to need some variables, so make some important variables. Well, all variables are important really if you need them. Protected var, and we'll have a type, so type, and this is going to be a string. In fact, I'm going to save the class just before we get too far into it. Make sure it's called perk, spelt the same as the class name. Save it in the same folder as everything and press save. So I've got a type, which is basically the type of perk being made. Protected var strength, and that's going to be a number, and this is the strength of the perk. For example, plus 0.5 would be 50% fire speed. And finally, we'll have a protected var attribute string, and this is the attribute to affect in our target. Oh, we need a target as well actually. So this is the attribute to manipulate in the target of the perk, and we'll have a target, so we'll have protected var target, and we'll make it an object. I was going to say we'll make it a sprite, but you don't have to import anything to use an object and it'll accomplish the same thing. The target to buff / boost / perk up, or I don't know, empower. What other fancy words can we have? Improve, boon, enhance, right click, synonyms. I think that's it for variables. We'll eventually come back to add a lifespan. In the constructor, we're going to have to set all of these. That also means we're going to have to pass them in because we need the perk to know all of this information. So in the constructor here, I'm going to start by taking the target. So we'll have tar of type object, and we won't have a default for that. That has to be passed in. You cannot make a perk unless you give it a target. We'll go with the strength next, I guess. S string, no, it's not a string, is it? It's a number. We'll have a default of 1, just so we can. Have the attribute A, and that's a string. By default, we'll have something called extra shots or bonus shots. So by default, this perk will boost the number of shots that the ship fires. And then finally, the type, we'll do T string. By default is rapid fire. Not rapid fire, multi-shot. So that's just a name for the perk that we will eventually display in the game, in the HUD, to show you what perks are active. We need to set the variables, these class variables, based on the stuff we've passed in. So type will be T, strength will be S, attribute will be A, and target will be tar. Let's save that for now. We'll hop into the turret class at this point just to set up this bonus shots part. So I'm in the turret class, I'm looking at the properties that already exist. I'm just going to space these constants out, get rid of them further down. And I'm going to add a variable here. We'll do it near the shot, near the number of shots. So at the moment it fires 5. I don't know why I've set it there. Shouldn't really do that. Nothing wrong with that, but I like to have them in the constructor, so I'm going to move that. Num to shoot equals 1. So start by firing 1 bullet. So when the turret loads up now, it will start by shooting 1 at a time. We're going to make a variable to affect that, and this needs to be public at the moment so our perk can have access to it. So we'll do public var bonus shots of type integer. We don't want him to fire 1.5 bullets. Just comment that in. Extra bullets manipulated by perks. Come into the constructor and we'll set it to 0. No bonus shots to begin with. And lastly, we need to update the firing logic in here. So if we go to fire, find this for loop that we set up that controls the number of shots. So we've got num to shoot at the moment, but we want to do num to shoot plus bonus shots. So that takes into account how many bonus shots we're using. Save it. The turret's probably okay for now. We'll have to come back to it later on, but we want to go back to the perk. Now that the variable is there to be used, we'll apply the perk to the target. So using our newfangled knowledge, we'll say target square brackets attribute plus equals strength. So we'll add strength to the target's attribute. In this case, what that really means is the player dot bonus shots plus equals 1. That's what it would be if we wrote it out in the level. Save the perk, jump into the level, and find the section that handles key presses that we did last time. So we've got here in the S key, we've got a little bit that traces out a statement that says we should be firing more bullets, but we don't at the moment. We need to actually put the logic in. So I'm going to do var p equals new perk. You can see that ActionScript has detected my perk class being saved in the same folder. open brackets, and it tells me what I need to pass in. And really the only thing that I have to pass is a target, and in this case that's going to be the player. And fingers crossed now, if we save it and test it, no errors. Start the game, I should be able to press the S key to fire more bullets. So if I press S, you can see that the trace statement tells us to fire more, and we can actually see that we are firing more. So that's that's always a plus when it works. Let's go a bit nuts, see how many we can effectively become indestructible by firing so many bullets. What we're actually doing there is firing bullets on top of bullets. Firing that many that they're overlapping. And I'm basically indestructible, they can't get near enough. At least it works though. What we'll eventually do is add a lifespan to the perk so that that sort of stuff can't happen. But while we're having fun with it, let's add some extra stuff. So we'll increase the firing speed as well. So while we're here, we'll do, just above, we'll do varp. This is bad practice here to use the same variable name twice. You'll notice it'll give me a warning, but it won't stop the program running. You're allowed to duplicate a variable's name. It just warns you in case you didn't mean to do it. So I'm going to do new perk, open brackets, target the player again. But this time I'm going to change the strength. We'll maybe have 10% faster firing every time. So we'll do 0.1 for 10%. The attribute this time we need to make up. That can be bonus cooldown, bonus firing speed. And the type will be rapid fire this time. Let's save that one. We need to go and make this bonus firing speed variable in the turret, so I'm going to copy its name, go to the turret, up to the properties bit, and just under the shot cooldown here we'll add a public variable called bonus firing speed. That's going to be of type number. Bonus rate of fire. That would have been a better one. Bonus rough. Go to the constructor, set that in here. Got it on the clipboard, why don't I just paste it? And we'll set it to 0, so no bonus speed to begin with. Bonus. We need to update the logic again. This one's going to be slightly trickier. There's a bit of maths to wrap our head around and maybe affect the way that this if works. At the moment we say if shot cooldown is less than or equal to 0, reset the shot cooldown and do the firing bit. Now shot cooldown reduces by 1 every time. We can take that as a given. So what we can do in here is just reduce this value it gets reset to based on how fast we're firing. So if we do max cooldown divided by, and then in brackets we do 1 plus bonus rate of fire, and again I'm typing it when it's on the clipboard. So the 1 guarantees that by default we're just firing at normal speed, because max cooldown divided by 1 stays as max cooldown was. But by adding the bonus to the 1, we slowly increment it. So when we say we get to 1.2, max cooldown divided by 1.2 is a lower number. It's a smaller number than 10. And speaking of numbers, I think this shot cooldown is an integer at the moment, which means this can only be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It can't be 9.6, for example. So I'm going to go to the top, change the shot cooldown from int to number, which allows me to fire at 9.6 speed instead of just 9 or 10. And we'll have to adjust this a little bit, but let's try it. Let's save it and test it. We get the warning, the duplicate variable definition. Notice it doesn't stop the game working like an error. Errors would break the SWF, whereas warnings just are there to give you a heads up. Start the game, let's see if I can fire faster. So if I just hold fire, that's the normal rate of fire. If I keep pressing A, you can see that we are actually firing faster, which is pretty good. Add to that multiple shots, and again, we become totally indestructible. So we're firing faster and we're firing more. Let's fire even quicker. Look at that. That's almost making me have some kind of seizure. Yeah, that worked. Let's just update this logic a bit, because at the moment there's a risk that this shot cooldown will get to 0, which means that when it's reset, it'll be set back to 0, effectively meaning we're firing at the speed of whatever Flash can handle. So I'm going to update it a little bit. I'm going to change this this if to a while. Say while we're allowed to shoot, and instead of setting the shot cooldown to be something, I'm going to add the max cooldown to it. So instead of resetting the cooldown, we'll put add to the cooldown. So there is a chance that we can fire twice on a frame now. If we get to the cooldown speed that is below 1, we can actually fire 2 times in a frame. So we're not putting a cap on the rate of fire there. Just check that it works and we don't get an infinite loop. So press A to fire faster. Yeah, it's working. Not throwing any errors. It's always a bonus. But the game's far too easy now, so these perks really shouldn't last forever. Eventually they'll cost energy as well. We can just spam them all we like. Adding energy later in will make it a bit harder. But we'll look at giving them a lifespan quickly now. So we'll go to the perk, add a new variable, protected var lifespan of type, and now here's where you need to make a choice. If you're happy using timers, use a timer. If you want to use a tween to do it, use a tween. I'm just going to count frames because it's nice and simple. Lifespan. So the lifespan is going to be a number of frames that I'm going to decrement every time, and we need to set it in here. So we'll pass it in. We'll have target object, a strength, a type, and then at the end we'll have a lifespan, should we? So L int, and by default we'll say 100 frames. And in the constructor, if we do lifespan equals L, we should be set up. To make use of this lifespan though, we need an update function. So we're going to have to tell the level to update these perks. Rather than adding an enter frame listener to the perk, I'm going to make the level update it just like it does with the ships and the bullets and so on. So make an update function to manage the lifespan. What are we doing? Public, just indented. Public function update. It's not going to take any arguments, it's not going to return anything, so we'll just get into it and we'll do lifespan minus minus. Reduce the lifespan. And what we need to do is, if the lifespan is over, cancel the perk. So if lifespan less than or equal to 0, we want to do the opposite of this. So that applies the perk. I'm going to copy it, paste it in here and undo it by putting minus. So that reverses the perk. Save that and go back to the level. Now what we're going to need to do is keep all these perks in a list. So I'm going to make an array up here of perks. Don't know why it needs to be public, but okay. Public var perks of type array. In the constructor, just make sure it exists. So perks equals new array. Set up the perk array. And then back down to our keyboard stuff. We can get around the warning now. Instead of getting a warning, we can just throw this new perk straight into the array. So we can do perks.push and just add a new perk straight into it. Make sure you put the extra bracket on the end so that the push function is closed and the constructor of the perk is closed. And we'll do the same here. So perks.push, open brackets around this new perk. Make sure they get closed at the end. Save that. So we now have an array of perks that we can manipulate. And if you go down to your every frame function in the level class, you'll notice from our handy little refactoring session that we have this comment. Now what you should have been doing really as you program is bearing in mind all that refactoring stuff and making your classes in this way anyway. I know mine's really messy, but that's because I'm in a frantic rush after being far too ambitious with the series just to get it finished. But try to go through things and lay them out like this. It makes your life a lot easier in the future. And we'll make a function here called doPerks. We don't need to comment it because it's commented above. Go to the end of that function and make a new protected function, doPerks. Doesn't take anything, doesn't return anything, but I will comment above it the doPerks function. And in here we want to loop through all the perks. So we have a for loop, and we've done this to death now. So for var I equals 0, I is less than perks.length, I++. Let's update the perk. So it would be perks I dot update. And we also want to remove the perk if it's dead. So we could say remove the perk if its lifespan is over. So let's have an if there. If perks I dot lifespan less than or equal to 0, perks dot splice I, 1. Now this at the moment isn't ideal because we're counting up through this array. So say we've got 10 perks, and of those perks, perk 5 is out of life. When we get to perk 5, we'll remove it. So effectively, perk 6 becomes perk 5. And we carry on through this for loop. Then we come back to the top, I gets put up to 6, which effectively means we overlook a perk in this loop because what was perk 6 is actually perk 5 by the time we get back round to it. And to fix that, to guard against it, we can count backwards through the array. So let's count backwards to safeguard. I think we've done it before, I'm probably repeating myself, but it's useful. So instead of starting at O, we'll start at perks.length -1. And we'll say while I is greater than or equal to 0. So we're actually counting down when we change the plus plus to minus minus. Save that. If we kept that as plus plus, we'd get an infinite loop and we'd crash again. Save it, cross your fingers. We'll test it with the multi-shot one because that's the more obvious one. So if I fire 2 shots there, oh, I just broke it somehow. I just mashed my mouse a few times and I've got no bullets. Oh no, it's because it's totally removing. It's got an error, that's why. Property lifespan not found on Perk. Have I not set it? What have I done? Done something wrong? Oh, it's because lifespan's protected. Let's just make that public. I'll show you another way to fix that actually while we're at it. So the problem there was that level was trying to use lifespan here, but lifespan in the Perk class was protected, meaning that the level wasn't allowed to use it. By setting it to public and testing again, it should now work. So if I fire 2 bullets, after 100 frames it should reset to 1 bullet, and it does, and we don't get the error this time. Let's try it again. We'll go up to 3 bullets, so I'm now firing three times, and it's reset after 100 frames back to 1. That's pretty cool, even if I do say so myself. Yeah, a different way to fix this, instead of having that public, we'll set it back to protected. We'll go to the level, and instead of asking about the lifespan, we'll just put if perks I dot dead. Save that. Go back into the perk, and we'll have a variable to track if we're dead or not. So we'll have a public var. In fact, no, we won't. We'll have a function. So I'm going to go back to my level again. You could do it with a variable, but I'm going to have a function dead. So at the bottom here, I'm going to have a function to tell another class if this perk is dead. So function dead. Make it public so that other classes can use it. Public function dead. Doesn't take anything in, but it does return something this time. So I'm going to put a colon, and it's going to return a boolean, which is true or false. And this time we're going to use the logic again. So if lifespan is less than 0, return true. Else, I'm doing this in a very long-winded way, else, structure your code properly, man, else return false. After all that, we didn't actually need the else. We could have just simplified it. Let's refactor it a bit. Yeah, that was it. I meant to do it wrong so I could show you some refactoring. If the lifespan is less than 0, we'll return true, saying that we're dead. Otherwise, we'll return false. So the only other option is for the function to carry on and get to this return false statement. We could refactor that even further by simplifying the if to just be like that. So the if statement is working in line there. Save that and test it. Go into the game. Let's boost up the amount of shots we're firing. So I've gone up to 4. After 100 frames, it should. No, I've broken it, haven't I? I didn't save my level class, that's why. And bump the amount of shots. So we're firing 3 bullets. After 100 frames, we should drop back down to 1, and we do. So it did work, I just forgot to save. And we're approaching the half-hour now for this video. I'd say that's more than long enough. There's plenty of development still to go with perks. We've got to set them up so that they can stack. We've got to set them up so that they can react to when the turret gets hit, which currently they don't. And various other bits. So we will work with them a bit further. Maybe not in the next video, we might give them a break for now, but we're getting there, we're slowly getting there.